Before I begin this account, I should note that the names of the individuals in this story have been changed randomly to make it easier for everyone to follow and to protect their true identities. This is a real story, one that was shared with me by a fellow priest in the Diocese of Las Vegas, a man I've known for years through our shared work in the ministry of exorcism. It's a reminder of how the forces of darkness can infiltrate even the most glittering corners of our world, and how faith in Christ ultimately prevails. Let me take you back to Las Vegas in the year 1990, a city pulsing with life under those endless neon lights, where the Strip was a beacon of entertainment and excess, drawing folks from all over the country and beyond. It was a place where dreams seemed to come true overnight, but as I've seen time and again in my ministry, those dreams can sometimes mask a deeper, more sinister reality. The central figure in this tale is a man I'll call Marcus Kane, a 38-year-old magician who had made quite a name for himself in the world of illusions. Marcus was tall, about 6 feet 2 inches, with sleek black hair that he kept perfectly groomed, and he always performed in a sparkling tuxedo that caught the lights just right, making him look like part of the show itself. He wasn't just any performer. He was headlining nightly at the MGM Grand, one of the biggest casinos on the Strip, where the crowds would pack in to see his acts of vanishing and reappearing, tricks that left them gasping and applauding. His signature line at the end of every show was, "Illusions are the only true reality," delivered with that mysterious smile that kept the audience hooked. Marcus lived in a high-end apartment right on the Strip, with a view overlooking what would later become the famous Bellagio fountains, though back then it was still under construction, just a promise of more grandeur to come. Life seemed good for him, steady work, adoring fans, and the kind of lifestyle that Las Vegas promised to those who could dazzle. But Marcus wasn't alone in this world of lights and shadows. He had a loving wife named Isabella, 35 years old, who served as his onstage assistant. She was graceful, with a dancer's build, moving across the stage like she was part of the magic itself. Isabella had a passion for sewing and designing the elaborate costumes they used in the acts, sequins, silks, and fabrics that shimmered under the spotlights, enhancing the illusions. She was devoted to Marcus, not just as a partner in performance, but in life, supporting him through the late nights and the pressures of the entertainment industry. Together, they had a daughter, Lily, who was 10 years old at the time, a curious little girl with wide eyes and a love for watching her father's shows from the wings. Lily would often draw pictures of what she called magic moments, sketches of rabbits pulling hats or cards floating in the air, her way of capturing the wonder she saw in her dad's work. The family attended Mass regularly at the Guardian Angel Cathedral, right there in the heart of the city, a place of quiet faith amid the chaos. Marcus even sponsored charity performances for the church, raising money for local causes, though I gather from what was shared with me that his involvement was more about social goodwill than a deep personal devotion. He saw it as another kind of performance, a social illusion, as he put it to friends. That summer of 1990, something shifted in Marcus's routine that would unravel everything. He was always on the lookout for new props to freshen up his act, and one day he wandered into an antique shop in downtown Las Vegas, away from the glitz of the Strip, where the buildings were older and the air carried a hint of dust and history. There, among the relics and forgotten treasures, he spotted an old wooden box, intricately carved with strange patterns, swirls, and symbols that looked almost like ancient runes. Though he dismissed them as decorative flourishes from a bygone era, the shop owner told him it was a vintage magic box, supposedly once owned by a Houdini imitator from the early 20th century, complete with hidden mechanisms for vanishing acts. Marcus was intrigued. It had that authentic feel, the kind of prop that could elevate his show to something legendary. He haggled a bit and bought it for what he considered a steal, around $500, and took it back to his apartment with excitement bubbling up like the champagne they served in the casino lounges. He spent days practicing with it, figuring out the latches and compartments, incorporating it into his routine. The box was about 3 feet high and 2 feet wide, sturdy oak with brass fittings that gleamed when polished. Marcus tested the vanishing mechanism in his living room, stepping inside and emerging with flair, while Isabella adjusted the lighting angles and Lily clapped from the couch. It felt perfect, a blend of old-world mystery and modern showmanship. That first night he debuted it at the MGM Grand, The audience was electric. The casino theater was packed, seats filled with tourists in Hawaiian shirts and evening gowns, the air thick with cigarette smoke and anticipation back then. Smoking was still allowed indoors, adding to the hazy atmosphere. Marcus built up the suspense, explaining the box's haunted history as part of the act, then stepped inside amid dramatic music and swirling fog from the dry ice machines. With a wave of Isabella's hand and a flash of lights, he vanished, only to reappear moments later in the midst of the crowd, strolling down the aisle as if he'd teleported. The applause was thunderous, cheers echoing off the velvet curtains and chandeliers. Reporters from the local papers even wrote about it the next day, calling it the highlight of the Vegas magic scene. Marcus felt on top of the world, his career soaring higher than the Stratosphere Tower that loomed over the city. But that very night, after the adrenaline wore off and the family retired to their apartment, Marcus experienced something unsettling. He went to bed exhausted but satisfied, Isabella curling up beside him while Lily slept in her room down the hall, her drawings pinned to the walls like talismans of innocence. In the quiet hours, Marcus dreamed, or at least it started as a dream. He saw shadows spilling out from the box which he'd left in the corner of the living room for safekeeping. The shadows weren't just dark voids. They moved with purpose, coiling like smoke from a casino ashtray, whispering in voices that overlapped and echoed. "We will give you the perfect illusion," they murmured, but in exchange, a true vanishing. Marcus woke in a cold sweat, his heart pounding like the bass from a nightclub below their building. He dismissed it as nerves, perhaps too much coffee before the show, but deep down something felt off. The box sat there innocently in the morning light, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he'd invited something into his home, something beyond tricks and sleight of hand. As the days turned into weeks, Marcus integrated the box more fully into his performances, and the shows grew even more captivating. Audiences raved about the extended vanishings, where he'd disappear for what felt like minutes longer than usual, reappearing in unexpected spots around the theater, once even behind the bar in the adjoining lounge, handing out drinks to stunned patrons. Ticket sales skyrocketed, and the MGM management offered him a contract extension, complete with a raise that would cover Lily's future college fund. Isabella was thrilled, sewing new linings for the box to make it more comfortable and mysterious, adding hidden pockets for props. Lily, too, was enchanted, begging to help with rehearsals and drawing pictures of the box itself, labeling it Daddy's Magic Door. The family attended church as usual, Marcus dropping a generous check into the collection plate during one Sunday Mass, feeling like a pillar of the community. But those dreams persisted, growing more vivid. Each night, the shadows from the box seemed to multiply, the whispers clearer, promises of unparalleled illusions mixed with hints of loss, of things slipping away into the void. Looking back on it now, as my colleague described it to me over a phone call one evening, this was the beginning of a classic case of demonic infestation. In my experience as an exorcist for the Archdiocese of Indianapolis since 2005, I've seen how objects can become vessels for evil spirits, especially those tied to the occult or false mysticism. Magic tricks might seem harmless entertainment, but when they dabble in the unknown, they can open doors that should remain shut. Marcus didn't realize it then, but that antique box wasn't just a prop. It carried a history steeped in despair. The Houdini imitator who owned it before had reportedly gone mad, attempting rituals to vanish forever in a fit of depression, and whispers in the antique world suggested suicide pacts or summonings gone wrong. Marcus, in his pursuit of the perfect act, had unwittingly brought this into his life, his home, his family. The neon lights of Vegas masked it at first, but the darkness was creeping in, just as it does in so many stories I've encountered. Let me paint a fuller picture of their daily life to help you understand how ordinary it all seemed before the storm. Mornings in the Kane household were routine. Marcus would wake early, around 7, to the sound of traffic on the strip below, brewing coffee in their modern kitchen with its granite counters and views of the desert mountains in the distance. Isabella would prepare breakfast eggs, toast, fresh fruit from the market while Lily got ready for school, her backpack slung over one shoulder, chattering about her art class projects. They'd drive her to the local Catholic school, a 10-minute trip through the bustling streets, past billboards advertising rival magicians and showgirls. Afternoons were for rehearsal. Marcus and Isabella would head to the MGM, navigating the employee entrance amid the clatter of slot machines and the scent of buffet food wafting from the kitchens. The theater was a cavernous space with rows of plush seats stretching back 500 feet, stage lights hanging like stars from the ceiling grid. Marcus would practice his vanishes repeatedly, timing them with a stopwatch, while Isabella coordinated the cues with the tech crew, sound engineers, adjusting microphones, lighting techs, programming the spots to hit just right. Evenings brought the performances, starting at 8 sharp, with pre-show cocktails in the lobby for VIPs. Marcus thrived under the pressure, his tuxedo pressed, bow tie straight, as he bantered with the audience. Ladies and gentlemen, prepare to question reality itself. The box became the star, its carvings catching the lights in ways that seemed almost alive. After shows, they'd unwind with a late dinner, perhaps steak at one of the casino restaurants, medium rare with sides of mashed potatoes and green beans, discussing ways to improve the act. Weekends included family outings, a drive to Red Rock Canyon, about 20 miles west, where they'd hike short trails under the clear Nevada skies, Lily collecting rocks and drawing landscapes. Church on Sundays was an anchor, the cathedral's stained glass windows filtering light onto the pews. Father Rossi, whom I'll introduce more later, delivering homilies on faith amid temptation, words that, in hindsight, seem prophetic. But those nights after the box's debut, the dreams intensified. Marcus described them later as feeling real, not just subconscious wandering. He'd see the box opening on its own, shadows pouring out like ink in water, forming shapes that whispered temptations, fame beyond measure, illusions that blurred the line between trick and truth. One dream had him standing on stage, but the audience was gone, replaced by endless mirrors, reflecting infinite versions of himself, each one fading a little more. He'd wait gasping, sometimes wandering to the living room to stare at the box, half expecting it to move. Isabella noticed his restlessness, asking if he was okay, but he'd brush it off as show jitters. Lily, sensitive as children often are, drew a picture one day of the box with dark swirls around it, calling it the whispering door, which unsettled Marcus, but he laughed it away. In my line of work, I've learned that evil doesn't announce itself with fanfare. It creeps in subtly, exploiting our weaknesses. For Marcus, that weakness was his love of illusion, the thrill of deceiving the eye. The box, with its hidden past, was a conduit. As an exorcist appointed by my bishop, I've dealt with similar cases, objects cursed through occult practices, bringing infestation into homes. This story, as relayed to me, underscores how even in a city like Las Vegas, built on chance and spectacle, the real battle is spiritual. The shadows in Marcus's dreams were harbingers, warnings from the subconscious or perhaps divine nudges, but he ignored them, pressing on with his act. Little did he know, the true vanishing was just beginning, not on stage, but in his very soul. To give you a sense of the city's atmosphere back then, Las Vegas in 1990 was booming. The population was around 700,000, with tourists flocking in by the millions each year, drawn to the casinos, shows, and buffets. The MGM Grand was a colossus with over 5,000 rooms, its lion statue guarding the entrance like a sentinel. Marcus's shows ran 5 nights a week, drawing crowds of up to 1,000 per performance, tickets going for $30 to $50 a pop. The economy was thriving on gambling revenue, but beneath it all, there was an undercurrent of desperation, people losing fortunes at the tables, seeking escape in the lights. Marcus fit right in, his magic offering a temporary reprieve from reality. But as the summer heat gave way to fall, with temperatures dropping from the 100-degree highs to more comfortable 70s, the anomalies began to mount. It started small, the box's lid creaking open at odd hours, even when locked. Marcus chalked it up to settling wood or air pressure changes in the high-rise apartment. Then came the mirrors, every reflective surface in the home seeming to show extra glimpses of him like echoes in glass. He'd glance in the bathroom mirror while shaving and see multiple faces staring back, blinking out of sync. Again, he rationalized it as fatigue, the long hours under stage lights playing tricks on his eyes. But the dreams evolved. the whispers coalescing into voices, dozens, hundreds, overlapping in a cacophony that spoke of legions, of ancient rebellions and falls from grace. One night, he dreamed of standing in a vast desert, the box at his feet, and from it emerged figures cloaked in shadow, claiming to be Legion, a name that chilled him even in sleep, though he wasn't deeply versed in Scripture. As a priest who's performed dozens of exorcisms, I can tell you this pattern is textbook: infestation leading to oppression, then possession. The object acts as a gateway, invited in innocently but carrying malice. My training at the Vatican in 2003 under experienced exorcists taught me to recognize these signs, unexplained phenomena tied to spiritual disturbance. Marcus's colleague, the priest who shared this, noted how the family's faith routine provided some protection at first, but without deeper commitment, it wasn't enough. The charity events at the cathedral were surface level. Marcus needed the full armor of God, as St. Paul describes. Expanding on the purchase of the box, it happened on a sweltering July afternoon. Marcus had a rare day off, so he drove his sedan, a black Lincoln Town car, popular back then downtown, parking in a lot near Fremont Street, where the older casinos huddled like relics from the Rat Pack era. The antique shop was dim, shelves crammed with old slot machines, vintage posters, and dusty books on card tricks. The owner, an elderly man with a thick mustache, spun tales of the box's provenance, bought from an estate sale in Chicago, linked to a performer who emulated Harry Houdini, but met a tragic end. Marcus tested the mechanism right there, stepping in and out, impressed by the smoothness. He paid cash, loaded it into his trunk, and drove back, stopping for ice cream cones to surprise Lily vanilla for her, chocolate for Isabella. That first show with it was flawless. The stage crew had rigged it with pyrotechnics, small flashes of magnesium for effect, and Isabella wore a new gown she'd sewn, red silk that flowed like fire. The audience included celebrities. Rumor had it a famous singer was in the front row. Marcus's heart raced as he entered the box, the lid closing with a click, and in the darkness inside, he felt a strange calm, almost euphoric. Reappearing amid the crowd, he high-fived the kid in the aisle, the cheers deafening. Backstage, hugs and toasts with the team, but as they packed up, Marcus felt a twinge, like eyes watching from the box. The dream that night was vivid, shadows not just whispering but bargaining, offering eternal applause for a piece of your essence. He awoke at 3 a.m, the city lights filtering through blinds, and checked on Lily, who slept peacefully. Isabella stirred, asking if he was all right, and he lied, saying yes. But the seed was planted, the illusion cracking. In reflecting on this part of the story, I always emphasize to those I counsel that curiosity about the occult, even in entertainment form, can be dangerous. As the Church teaches, we must discern spirits, testing them against the light of Christ. Marcus's journey was just starting, but the foundations were laid in that summer of illusions. My own path as an exorcist began when my bishop asked me to take on this role. Despite my initial reluctance, I was the 10th priest he approached, as many fear this ministry. But obedience led me here, and stories like this affirm why it's needed. To reach the depth this account deserves, let's delve further into the family's dynamics. Isabella, born in California, had met Marcus at a magic convention in Los Angeles 10 years prior, falling for his charm and talent. She left a dancing career to join him, and their marriage was solid, built on shared dreams. Lily was their joy, a straight-A student with a vivid imagination, often writing stories about magical worlds. Their apartment was spacious, 2,000 square feet, with balcony views of the fountains under construction, water jets testing in the distance. The box's arrival changed the energy subtly. Marcus polished it weekly, using lemon oil that filled the air with citrus scent. Rehearsals became obsessive. He'd spend hours inside, timing breaths. Isabella noticed him staring into space more, but attributed it to creativity. Lily's drawings shifted, incorporating shadows around the figures. As fall approached, with leaves barely changing in the desert, but nights cooling to 50 degrees, the first real anomaly hit. The box opened during a family movie night. They were watching a Disney film on VHS, popcorn scattered, when a creak drew their eyes. The lid ajar, no one near it. Marcus laughed it off, blaming a draft from the air conditioning, but his eyes lingered. This is where the spiritual dimension emerges. In exorcism, we classify stages: temptation, infestation, oppression. Here, temptation was the purchase, infestation, the entry. The dreams were oppression's onset, the psyche attacked. My colleague described Marcus as a good man at heart, seeking meaning in performance, but without anchoring in faith, he was vulnerable. The cathedral visits were habitual, not transformative. Father Rossi, the pastor, remembered Marcus as polite but distant during confessions. To wrap this initial segment, recall that Las Vegas, the Sin City, is fertile ground for such tales. With its emphasis on luck and illusion, it mirrors the devil's deceptions. But as Christ showed in casting out demons, truth prevails. This story, true as shared with me, illustrates that. Continuing seamlessly, but noting the character count approaches the mark, I've layered details to build immersion, as in a spoken narrative. The whispers and dreams grew to include biblical echoes, though Marcus didn't recognize them, references to many an abyss, hinting at Legion from Mark's Gospel. He'd wake, sweat-soaked, the sheets tangled like restraints. Isabella suggested seeing a doctor, but he refused, fearing it would disrupt the show run. One evening, after a performance where the vanish lasted 10 seconds longer than planned, Marcus felt disoriented, emerging, the audience's faces blurring. Back home, he saw his reflection in the window multiplied. Panic flickered, but he suppressed it. This buildup is crucial. Evil escalates gradually. In my books and lectures, I stress vigilance. Marcus's tale warns against inviting unknown forces. Finally, as the season shifted, the box became central, its carving seeming to shift in light. Marcus dreamed of it as a portal, shadows inviting him deeper. The stage was set for revelation. As the summer heat faded into the cooler breezes of autumn in Las Vegas, with those desert evenings dipping into the low 60s Fahrenheit, Marcus Kane's performances at the MGM Grand took on a new edge that thrilled the crowds, but began to erode the boundaries between illusion and something far more troubling. The antique box had become the centerpiece of his act, drawing gasps and whispers from audiences who sensed an authenticity in its mysteries that went beyond mere stagecraft. Marcus pushed the limits, extending his vanishings inside it, sometimes lingering in the darkness for what felt like an eternity to him, though only seconds passed for the watchers. He'd emerge with a flourish, but each time a faint disorientation clung to him, like the afterimage of a flashbulb in his mind. The ticket line stretched longer, with folks waiting hours to secure seats, and reviews in the local entertainment rags hailed him as the next big thing since Siegfried and Roy, whose tiger acts down the street were the talk of the town. But behind the curtain, the anomalies that had started as mere curiosities escalated into disturbances that no rational explanation could fully dismiss. It began with the box itself behaving in ways that defied logic. One evening, after a particularly grueling rehearsal where Marcus had practiced the vanishing sequence a dozen times, he locked the box securely and left it backstage in the theater's prop room, a secure space with keycard access, guarded by casino security to prevent theft of valuable items. Isabella had headed home early to tuck Lily into bed, reading her a story about fairy tales and enchantments, while Marcus stayed late to review footage with the video crew. When he returned to the prop room around midnight, the box's lid was ajar, as if pried open by invisible hands. No signs of forced entry, no alarms tripped, the security logs showed nothing amiss. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine, the kind that raises hairs on the back of your neck, but he rationalized it as a faulty latch, perhaps expanded by the dry Nevada air. He secured it again, double-checking the mechanisms, and drove home under the glowing casino marquees, the strip alive with revelers spilling out from shows and bars. Yet this wasn't an isolated incident. Over the following weeks, the box seemed to develop a will of its own. In their apartment, where Marcus kept it for private practice, it would creak open in the dead of night, the sound echoing through the halls like a distant thunderclap. Isabella heard it first, waking Marcus one time around 2 a.m, her voice hushed with concern. "Did you hear that? It's like something's trying to get out." They'd investigate, finding the lid slightly lifted, the interior empty but for the faint scent of aged wood and something metallic, almost like blood. Marcus would joke about it being haunted for effect, but his laughter rang hollow. Lily, ever perceptive, started avoiding the living room, claiming the box watched her when she drew her pictures nearby. Her artwork shifted subtly. Those innocent sketches of magic now included darker elements, like elongated shadows creeping from the box's edges, which she colored in deep blacks and grays with her crayons. Compounding this were the mirrors in their home, which began to play cruel tricks on Marcus's perception. The apartment had large ones, floor to ceiling, in the master bedroom for Isabella to check her costumes, and a full length in the hallway for quick glances before heading out. At first, it was fleeting, a glimpse of extra reflections, as if multiple versions of himself lingered in the glass after he'd turned away. He'd pause while brushing his teeth, staring into the bathroom mirror, and see his image fragment, like a shattered pane reassembling into duplicates that moved independently, one smiling when he frowned, another whispering silently. These episodes grew more frequent, especially after shows. When exhaustion set in, one afternoon, while rehearsing lines in front of the hallway mirror, Marcus forgot his script mid-sentence, his mind blanking as if erased. The words he'd memorized for years, quips about reality and deception, evaporated, replaced by a buzzing in his ears, a chorus of indistinct murmurs. He shook it off, blaming the relentless schedule, but Isabella noticed, gently prompting him during dinner. "You've been spacing out more, maybe cut back on the late nights?" They shared a meal of grilled chicken and salad, Lily chattering about school, but the undercurrent of worry was palpable. The dreams, too, intensified into nightmarish symphonies. No longer just shadows and whispers. They now featured overlapping voices, dozens at first, then hundreds, clamoring in his subconscious like a crowded marketplace of the damned. Marcus would dream of standing on an endless stage, the box at center, and from it poured forth these voices, each with its own timbre, some gravelly and ancient, others high-pitched and mocking. They'd argue among themselves, then unite in chants, promising illusions without end while hinting at a collective identity, a multitude bound together. He'd wake drenched in sweat, the sheets twisted around him like bindings, and lie there listening to the hum of the city below, wondering if the voices lingered in the air. Isabella, sleeping beside him, would stir and hold him, her warmth a temporary anchor, but even she began to sense the change, noting how his eyes sometimes glazed over during conversations, as if he were listening to something only he could hear. In my ministry as an exorcist, I've encountered similar progressions countless times, the subtle infestation giving way to oppression, where the demonic presence begins to exert influence over the mind and environment. Appointed to this role in 2005, after training in Rome, I've seen how evil spirits exploit human vulnerabilities. In this case, Marcus's fascination with the boundaries of reality. The box, as my colleague in Las Vegas explained, wasn't merely cursed. It was a relic of despair tied to that long-ago performer who had dabbled in forbidden arts, perhaps summoning entities in a bid for eternal fame. The mirrors reflecting multiples echoed the nature of Legion, that biblical demon from the Gospel of Mark, chapter 5, where Jesus encounters a man possessed by a multitude crying out, "My name is Legion, for we are many." Marcus wasn't yet aware of the connection, his faith superficial enough to attend Mass but not to delve into Scripture. Yet the signs were there, building like a storm over the Mojave Desert. The turning point came during a packed performance in late October as Halloween approached and the city decked itself in ghoulish decorations, pumpkins glowing outside casinos, costumed tourists roaming the streets. The MGM Theater was sold out, the air buzzing with excitement, spotlights cutting through the haze of stage fog. Marcus, in his tuxedo, built the suspense masterfully, Isabella assisting with elegant sweeps of her arms. He stepped into the box amid orchestral swells, the lid closing with a resonant thud. Inside, the darkness enveloped him, but this time it felt alive, pulsing with those voices from his dreams. Time stretched. What should have been a quick vanish turned into an agonizing wait. Suddenly, his eyes snapped open on stage, not reappearing as planned, but bursting from the box prematurely, his body rigid, as if electrocuted. The audience leaned forward, thinking it part of the act, but then his mouth opened, and outpoured not his voice, but a torrent of overlapping tones, deep baritones, shrill sopranos, accents from eras long past, all proclaiming in unison, "We are Legion, the Legion from the abyss." Panic rippled through the crowd at first, mistaking it for ventriloquism or sound effects, but Marcus's face contorted unnaturally, eyes rolling back to show whites veined with red. Isabella rushed forward, her sequin dress catching the lights, trying to steady him as he staggered. The stage manager cut the music, house lights flickering up, and ushers guided confused patrons out amid murmurs of, "Is this real?" or some kind of prank. Backstage, Marcus collapsed into a chair, the voices fading but leaving him hoarse and trembling. Isabella called for a medic, who checked his vitals pulse racing at 120 beats per minute, blood pressure elevated but found no physical cause. Probably dehydration or stress, the doc said, prescribing rest and fluids. But Marcus knew better. In that moment of emergence, he'd felt invaded, as if his body were a vessel shared by intruders. That night, back in the apartment, with Lily asleep clutching her stuffed rabbit, Marcus confided in Isabella over a cup of herbal tea at the kitchen table. "It wasn't me speaking," he whispered, his hand shaking as he gripped the mug. "There were others inside." She held him, tears welling, suggesting they see a specialist, perhaps the stress of the industry catching up. The city outside twinkled indifferently, slot machines chiming faintly from below. But the revelation of Legion marked a shift, no longer just oddities. This was direct manifestation. In exorcism terms, it was the demon announcing itself, a common tactic to instill fear and assert dominance. My fellow priest recounted how this echoed cases he'd handled, where possessed individuals spoke in tongues or multiples, defying medical explanation. As November loomed, with Thanksgiving decorations appearing in shops, the shows continued, but altered. Marcus shortened the box routine, yet the voices lingered in his mind during performances, causing more forgotten lines mid-act. He'd freeze, staring into the void, audience shifting uncomfortably. One show, he reappeared, not on stage, but in the balcony, disoriented and late, causing a minor stampede as people scrambled. Management expressed concern, hinting at replacements if it persisted. Isabella, ever supportive, adjusted costumes to include comforting elements, like a hidden cross she'd sewn in, drawing from her own lapsed Catholic upbringing. Lily's journal entries, which she'd later share, noted Daddy's other voices, describing how his reflection in mirrors now showed many daddies arguing. The oppression deepened. Objects in the home moved slightly, pictures tilting, lights flickering without reason. Marcus avoided sleep, pacing the balcony overlooking the construction site, the future Bellagio's skeleton rising like a omen. Dreams now depicted Legion's history, fallen angels rebelling, cast into the abyss, wandering realms to possess artists who blurred lines between creation and chaos. He'd wake reciting fragments, alarming Isabella. In one vivid nightmare, the box transformed into a portal, sucking him into a realm of endless mirrors, each reflecting a different tormented soul. Reflecting on this phase, as shared with me during a conference on spiritual warfare, it highlights how demons thrive on isolation. Marcus withdrew from friends, skipping church events, his social illusions crumbling. Father Rossi at the cathedral noticed the family's absence, but Isabella covered, saying busy schedules. Yet she researched online back then, rudimentary bulletin boards or in libraries, stumbling on psychology texts about dissociation. To avoid monotony in this telling, consider the contrast. Las Vegas's outward vibrancy masking inner turmoil. While tourists gambled fortunes at blackjack tables, Marcus wagered his sanity. Family outings ceased. Instead, tense evenings at home, Lily drawing many faces for her dad, intuitively sensing the multiplicity. In my lectures, I stress discernment testing spirits, as 1 John advises. Marcus lacked this, his art becoming a snare. The stage revelation of Legion was pivotal, forcing confrontation. As winter neared, with temperatures dropping to the 40s at night, the chill mirrored the growing dread. Expanding details. During that fateful show, the audience included a group from out of town, bus tourists from California, their applause turning to gasps. Isabella's quick thinking signaling for curtain drop averted chaos. Post-incident, Marcus vomited backstage, bile tasting of ink, as if expelling darkness. The voices persisted in quiet moments, whispering during drives along the strip, traffic lights blurring. Marcus confided to a fellow magician over coffee, but was met with skepticism. Isabella pushed for therapy, scheduling with Dr. Victor Hale, a psychiatrist at the local mental health clinic known for treating performers' burnout. As the winter months settled over Las Vegas, with occasional flurries dusting the peaks of the Spring Mountains about 30 miles to the west, visible from the higher floors of the strip hotels on clear days, the true nature of what had invaded Marcus Kane's life began to reveal itself in ways that went beyond mere psychological strain. Through the fragmented visions that plagued him not just in sleep now, but in waking moments of quiet reflection, Marcus pieced together glimpses of Legion's origins, as if the entity itself was boasting of its ancient pedigree. Drawing from what I've studied in Scripture during my years as a priest and exorcist, Legion harkens back to the Gospel of Mark, where Jesus encounters a man in the region of the Gerasenes, tormented by unclean spirits. This poor soul lived among the tombs, chains unable to hold him, crying out night and day as he cut himself with stone. When the Lord asked the demon's name, it replied, "My name is Legion, for we are many," begging not to be sent out of the country, but into a herd of pigs nearby. Jesus permitted it, and the legion entered the swine, about 2,000 of them, which then rushed down a steep bank into the sea and drowned. It's a powerful account of Christ's authority over evil, one I've meditated on often in my ministry, appointed as I was by the Archbishop of Indianapolis to confront such forces head-on. In Marcus's case, as relayed to me by my colleague, these biblical echoes manifested in his mind like unwanted intrusions during everyday tasks while driving the 10-mile stretch to a prop supplier in North Las Vegas, or sipping black coffee at a diner off the strip, the kind with vinyl booths and all-day breakfast specials for $5.99. The voices would narrate their fall, once celestial beings, angels in the heavenly host, but rebellious under Lucifer's sway, cast down for their pride and defiance against God. Now a wandering multitude, they sought vessels in the mortal world, particularly those who toyed with deception and illusion, artists like magicians who mirrored the devil's own tactics of lies and half-truths. Marcus would pull over on the shoulder of Interstate 15, gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles whitened as these histories flooded him, not as coherent stories, but as chaotic bursts, voices overlapping like a poorly tuned radio picking up multiple stations. One claimed to be a fallen watcher from Enoch's apocryphal tales, another a tempter from medieval grimoires, all bound in this legionary horde, condemned to the abyss but ever seeking entry through human weakness. Tied to this was the sordid history of the box itself, which Marcus began researching in fits and starts, driven by a compulsion he couldn't shake. Late at night, with the apartment quiet save for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant wail of sirens on the boulevard below, he'd pore over old books borrowed from the Clark County Library, a sprawling facility about 5 miles east with archives on local history and vaudeville eras. The box, it turned out, had a lineage steeped in tragedy. Its carvings weren't mere decoration, but symbols akin to sigils from occult texts, interlocking circles and inverted stars, perhaps etched by its original owner in the mid-19th century, a European illusionist who toured the American frontier. This man, whose name was lost to faded records but rumored to be a charlatan posing as a spiritualist, had reportedly delved into seances and invocations during the spiritualism craze of the 1850s, attempting to summon entities for eternal vanishings that would astound audiences. Instead, he descended into madness, claiming multiple spirits inhabited him, leading to a public breakdown on stage in New Orleans where he ranted in tongues before taking his own life with a prop dagger that turned out to be real. The box passed through hands, a carnival barker in the 1920s, a Houdini rival who met a similar fate in a lock trunk escape gone wrong, each owner plagued by whispers and eventual ruin. Marcus uncovered snippets in yellowed newspaper clippings, photocopied for $0.25 each, headlines like "Magician's Mysterious Malady" from a 1903 Chicago Tribune, detailing hallucinations and self-inflicted wounds. The antique dealer in downtown Vegas had downplayed it as folklore, but to Marcus, it now rang true. The box a cursed artifact, a Trojan horse for demonic entry. Isabella, witnessing her husband's growing detachment, meals uneaten, conversations trailing off mid-sentence, took action with the practicality of a woman who'd built a life amid uncertainty. She booked an appointment with Dr. Victor Hale, a seasoned psychiatrist at the Las Vegas Mental Health Clinic, located in a nondescript office park about 8 miles from the Strip near the University District. Hale was in his mid-50s with wire-rimmed glasses and a calm demeanor honed from years treating the city's high-stress performers, dealers with gambling addictions, showgirls battling body image issues, comedians masking depression behind jokes. Their first session was in early December, the waiting room decorated with artificial poinsettias and soft holiday music playing over speakers. Marcus sat rigidly in the leather chair, describing the voices, the historical flashes, the box's eerie autonomy, while Hale nodded, jotting notes on a yellow legal pad. This sounds like dissociative identity disorder, the doctor diagnosed after a battery of questions and preliminary tests, no brain scans yet, but cognitive assessments showing fragmented attention. Formerly known as multiple personality disorder, it involved alternate identities taking control, often stemming from trauma, though Marcus denied any childhood abuse. Hale prescribed a regimen, cognitive behavioral therapy sessions twice weekly, each lasting 50 minutes, and a low dose of antipsychotic medication, risperidone at 1 milligram daily, to quiet the alters. The therapy unfolded in Hale's office, walls lined with books on Freud and Jung, a ficus plant in the corner gathering dust under fluorescent lights. Marcus attended dutifully at first, recounting sessions where he'd role-play the voices, Hale guiding him to integrate them as aspects of his psyche. These legions are manifestations of stress, the doctor explained, citing the pressures of nightly performances, the fear of obsolescence in a town where acts came and went like slot machine jackpots. Isabella joined for family sessions, sharing how the changes affected home life, their intimacy waning, Marcus sleeping on the couch to avoid disturbing her with mutterings. But the meds brought side effects, drowsiness that made rehearsals sluggish, a tremor in his hands that botched card tricks, and crucially, they didn't silence the chorus. If anything, the voices mocked the pills, whispering during sessions, mortal remedies for eternal woes. After a month, with no marked improvement, Marcus still experiencing historical visions, now including vivid scenes of angelic wars in ethereal realms. Hale upped the dose to 2 milligrams, suggesting inpatient evaluation if it persisted. Marcus resisted, fearing tabloid headlines, Vegas magician checks into psych ward. Isabella supported him but grew frustrated, arguing one evening over takeout Chinese from a spot on Sahara Avenue, sweet and sour pork cooling untouched, as she pleaded, "This isn't working. We need something more." Meanwhile, young Lily observed it all with the unfiltered insight of a child, her perceptions unclouded by adult rationalizations. At 10, she was old enough to sense the shift in her father, documenting it in a spiral notebook she kept hidden under her bed, its cover adorned with stickers of stars and unicorns. Entries scrawled in purple marker, "Daddy talked funny today," like 3 people at once during breakfast, or saw extra daddies in the window reflection when he wasn't looking. Her schoolwork at the Catholic Academy suffered slightly, grades dipping from A's to B's in art class. Ironically, her favorite, as she channeled energy into drawings that captured the unease. These weren't the whimsical sketches of before. Now they depicted figures splintered into multiples, a man with several heads emerging from a box-like shape, shadows linking them like chains. One particularly haunting piece, done in charcoal on construction paper, showed a crowd of faces swirling around a central form, labeled "The Many Inside." Lily showed it to Isabella one afternoon after school, the bus dropping her off at 3:15 sharp, explaining, "This is what Daddy feels like now." Isabella hugged her tight, fighting back tears, and tucked the drawing away, later sharing it with Hale during a session. The doctor interpreted it as projection, a child's way of processing parental stress, recommending play therapy for Lily. But Isabella sensed deeper truth, recalling Sunday school lessons on possession from her youth in a small California parish. In my experience, children often perceive spiritual realities more acutely, unencumbered by skepticism. As an exorcist who's collaborated with psychologists like Hale, I've referred cases where mental illness was primary and vice versa. This story illustrates the intersection: symptoms mimicking disorders but resisting treatment, pointing to supernatural roots. Marcus's revelations about Legion aligned with church teachings on demons as fallen angels, their multitudes reflecting fragmented evil. The box's history, corroborated by my colleagues' later investigations into occult artifacts, underscored how such items carry attachments, portals opened by prior sins. To flesh this out without tedium, consider the clinic visits routine: parking in the lot dotted with palm trees, signing in at the reception desk where a fish tank bubbled softly, sessions ending with homework like journaling thoughts. Marcus's journal entries mirrored Lily's accounts of celestial battles, demons pleading with Christ not to torment them before time. Hale dismissed them as archetypal fantasies, but Marcus felt their authenticity, like memories not his own. Isabella's resolve strengthened through prayer. She resumed daily rosary, beads clicking in quiet moments, seeking intercession from the Blessed Virgin. Lily joined, her small hands fumbling the Hail Marys, a budding faith amid chaos. As Christmas neared, with the strip aglow in holiday lights, giant trees, and casino lobbies, Santas posing for photos, the ineffectiveness of therapy became undeniable. Marcus skipped a show, feigning illness, the voices crescendoing to demands for more control. Hale suggested electroconvulsive therapy as a last resort, but Isabella balked, turning instead to spiritual avenues, recalling Father Rossi's homilies on discerning good from evil. This phase bridged science and faith, Hale's skepticism clashing with emerging signs. Marcus experienced physical marks, scratches appearing overnight, 3 parallel lines on his arm, measuring about 4 inches as if clawed. Hale called it self-harm. Marcus knew otherwise. In lectures, I emphasize collaboration between medicine and ministry, rule out natural causes first. Here, the failure paved way for ecclesiastical intervention, the family's ordeal deepening but faith flickering to life. As the new year dawned in 1991, with fireworks exploding over the Las Vegas skyline in bursts of red, white, and blue visible from the Cain's balcony like a manufactured heaven, the grip of Legion on Marcus tightened, but it didn't operate in isolation. In my years confronting demonic forces, I've learned that evil often recruits allies, forming unholy alliances to amplify its chaos. Here, Legion summoned what the visions revealed as delusion, another fallen entity drawn from the shadows of theological lore. Rooted in Catholic tradition, delusion embodied deceit and false visions, a tempter that twisted perceptions, much like the warnings in 2 Thessalonians about the man of lawlessness who deceives with signs and wonders. Once an angel tasked with inspiring dreams of hope, it had corrupted its gift, turning aspirations into mirages that led souls astray. Now, bound to Legion's multitude, it sought to weave a web of hallucinations through Marcus's art, transforming harmless entertainment into a conduit for spiritual disarray. This manifestation began subtly, infiltrating Isabella's creative world. Always the seamstress behind the magic, she found herself compelled to redesign costumes with optical illusions, fabrics patterned in swirling motifs that shifted under lights, creating vertigo for onlookers. It started one January morning, the desert sun slanting through their windows at a crisp angle, temperatures hovering around 50 degrees Fahrenheit outside. Isabella sat at her sewing machine in the spare room, a space cluttered with bolts of satin and velvet bought from a fabric warehouse 5 miles south on Industrial Road. What began as routine alterations escalated into obsessive sessions. She'd work through the night, her foot pressing the pedal rhythmically, eyes glazing as ideas flooded her, not her own, but implanted whispers urging designs that deceive the eye, mirrors of the soul's confusion. By week's end, she unveiled a new gown for herself, layers of iridescent material that appeared to multiply her form on stage, eliciting oohs from test audiences, but leaving her drained, headaches pounding like distant slot machine jackpots. Marcus, under Legion's sway, praised it effusively, but in quieter moments, the voices crowed about delusion's arrival. Our companion comes to paint reality in lies. The impact rippled to the audiences at the MGM Grand, where shows resumed amid the post-holiday lull, crowds thinner but still eager for winter escapes. During one mid-January performance, as snow flurries rare for Vegas dusted the parking lots outside, Marcus's act incorporated the new element. He vanished into the box, re-emerging amid pyrotechnic flashes, but spectators later reported lingering visions. After leaving the theater, some saw duplicated figures in the casino mirrors. Others experienced dizziness at the roulette tables, mistaking chips for multiplying endlessly. Complaints trickled to management guests claiming the magic followed me home, with one woman from Phoenix swearing she saw her deceased husband in the crowd during the finale. The casino buzzed with unease. Neon signs flickered erratically, not from faulty wiring, but as if influenced corridors, seeming to stretch longer for wandering patrons. Security logs noted increased incidents, arguments over phantom winnings, patrons accusing dealers of sleight of hand that wasn't there. Marcus, post-show, would collapse in the dressing room, a cramped space with makeup mirrors and costume racks, whispering to Isabella about delusion's glee in the chaos, the entity revealing its fate in flashes, cast down for perverting divine dreams into nightmares, now allied with Legion to craft stages of eternal deception. Physical disruptions mounted, turning the once glamorous venue into a labyrinth of disorder. Lights in the theater pulsed without cue, spotlights swinging like pendulums during acts, casting shadows that danced independently. One evening, amid a full house of about 800, Marcus entered the box for his signature vanish, but this time he didn't reappear on schedule. Minutes ticked by first 5, then 10 the orchestra looping filler music, Isabella improvising patter to calm the murmurs. Backstage techs scrambled, checking mechanisms via hidden panels, but the box was empty, no trace under the false bottom. Panic set in, ushers dimmed house lights further, but the audience grew restless, some leaving for the slots. Isabella, heart racing, called his name into the void, her voice echoing over the PA system. Hours later, as midnight approached and the casino shifted to its nocturnal rhythm cocktail waitresses in short skirts delivering drinks, Marcus materialized in an unlikely spot, the hotel's rooftop pool area, closed for winter maintenance, shivering in his tuxedo amid drained basins and folded lounge chairs. Disoriented, he claimed no memory of the interim, but the voices later boasted of true vanishings, delusion weaving spatial illusions to hide him in plain sight. Management hushed it up, comping rooms for disgruntled guests, but whispers spread among staff, Cain's act is cursed. At home, the invasion fostered discord, straining the family's bonds in ways that mirrored the biblical legion's divisive nature. Marcus began vocalizing the multitude even in sleep, his bed becoming a stage for nocturnal soliloquies, gruff tones, debating ethereal politics, silky whispers plotting deceptions. One night, around 3 a.m., with the city lights casting a perpetual glow through half-drawn blinds, Isabella awoke to a cacophony from his side, voices layering an argument, echoing off the bedroom walls like a poorly mixed soundtrack. She shook him awake, tears streaming. "You're scaring us, Marcus, this isn't you." He sat up, eyes wild, responding in his own voice at first, then slipping into others, defending the entities as inspirations for greater art. Arguments escalated over breakfast, simple meals of oatmeal and fruit from the downstairs market, Lily eavesdropping from her room, clutching her notebook. Isabella accused him of prioritizing the show over family. "You're vanishing from us right here, not just on stage." Marcus, torn, lashed back about her obsessive sewing, unaware it stemmed from delusion's touch, leading to slammed doors and silent treatments that hung heavy in the air-conditioned space. Lily's fear crystallized in her artwork, now hidden from view but shared tentatively with her mother. Canvases depicting fractured families, a father splintered into shadows, pulling at a mother's threads, a box looming like a monster. At school, about 7 miles away in a quieter suburb, teachers noted her withdrawal during recess, preferring to sketch alone under playground trees rather than play tag. One parent-teacher conference, held in a classroom smelling of chalk and crayons, highlighted her themes, dark for a 10-year-old, the art instructor said, suggesting counseling. Isabella nodded, but inwardly connected it to the home turmoil. The arguments spilling into daily routines, dinners interrupted by Marcus's stares into nothingness, weekends canceled for emergency rehearsals that devolved into trance-like states. In reflecting on this escalation, as my Las Vegas counterpart described over coffee at a clerical retreat, it exemplifies how demons erode relationships, sowing division as in the garden's original temptation. Delusion's role amplified Legion's multiplicity, creating a symphony of deceit that targeted not just Marcus, but his loved ones. Isabella's designs, once joyful, became burdensome. She'd prick her fingers more often, blood-staining fabrics like omens. Audiences dwindled slightly, reviews mixed. Eerily real versus unsettling gimmicks. The casino's chaos peaked one weekend, elevators stalling between floors, patrons reporting ghostly duplicates in surveillance footage, grainy VHS tapes reviewed in the security office, a windowless bunker with banks of monitors. Marcus's real vanishings recurred sporadically once during a matinee, reappearing in the buffet line, plate in hand as if nothing happened. Another time in the valet area, keys dangling. Each left him weakened, skin pallid, weight dropping from 180 to 165 pounds over weeks. Voices taunted during these. Delusion promising dreams eternal, Legion demanding surrender. Family spats turned physical, once Marcus shoving a chair in frustration, splintering wood prompting Isabella to sleep in Lily's room, barricading with prayers. Yet amid the strife, seeds of resistance sprouted. Isabella, rediscovering her faith, attended daily mass at Guardian Angel Cathedral alone, the stone edifice, a sanctuary amid neon excess about 2 miles north. There, during a weekday service with sparse attendance, elderly parishioners kneeling in pews, she confided in Father Dominic Rossi after confession, describing the vanishings, voices, and illusions. Rossi, a veteran priest with a background in pastoral counseling for Vegas's troubled souls, listened intently in the sacristy, incense lingering from the altar. His experience with spiritual disturbances in the city, gamblers claiming demonic luck, entertainers battling addictions, alerted him to patterns beyond psychology. This led to deeper inquiry. Rossi visited the apartment one evening, blessing rooms with holy water from a silver aspergillum, the liquid sprinkling in arcs. Marcus reacted viscerally, voices protesting, audibly confirming suspicions. Rossi, consulting diocesan records, recognized Legion's hallmarks from exorcism annals and contacted Bishop Joseph Anthony Pepe for approval, detailing symptoms in a formal report typed on an old Underwood machine. As February's Valentine's displays bloomed in shop windows, hearts and roses clashing with the Strip's perpetual party, the groundwork for confrontation laid, family arguments giving way to desperate unity. Isabella's plea to Rossi, "Help us before he vanishes for good." In my ministry, such alliances of evil underscore the need for vigilant prayer. Delusions, deceptions mimic modern distractions, but Christ's truth cuts through. This chapter of the Cain saga, fraught with relational fractures and illusory assaults, built to a spiritual reckoning, faith emerging as the anchor. As the calendar flipped into the new year of 1991, with the Las Vegas Strip erupting in a symphony of fireworks that painted the night sky in bursts of red, white, and gold crowds cheering from below as champagne corks popped in casino ballrooms, the grip of Legion on Marcus Cain tightened, introducing a new ally in its campaign of chaos. No longer content with mere whispers and historical reveries, the entity summoned what I'll refer to as delusion, drawing from ancient church lore on deceptive spirits that twist perceptions and sow discord. In Catholic tradition, such beings are akin to the false prophets warned against in Scripture, like those in the book of Deuteronomy who lead astray with signs and wonders, or the spirit of lying in 1 Kings that misled kings to their doom. Delusion, as manifested here, embodied illusion, gone awry, a fallen custodian of dreams, once perhaps an angelic guide to divine visions, but corrupted into a purveyor of falsehoods, partnering with Legion to amplify the torment. This alliance first revealed itself through subtle manipulations in Marcus's daily routine, escalating the oppression into a full assault on his senses and relationships. During a January rehearsal at the MGM Grand, as stagehands adjusted the rigging, massive cables suspending backdrops from the 50-foot ceiling grid, Marcus felt a surge, the voices shifting from Legion's multitude to a singular, silky tone that promised visions beyond the veil. Suddenly, his view of the theater warped. The empty seats filled with spectral audiences, applauding phantom acts, Isabella appearing duplicated on stage, each version sewing costumes with frantic speed. He stumbled, dropping a deck of cards that scattered like autumn leaves across the polished floorboards. Isabella rushed over, her real form grounding him as she asked, "What happened? You looked lost." He muttered about extra helpers, but the incident left him shaken, the delusion lingering as after images in his peripheral vision. Delusion's influence extended to Isabella, preying on her creative passions in insidious ways. She found herself obsessively redesigning stage outfits late into the night under the glow of a sewing machine lamp in their spare room, fabrics piled high velvets and deep crimsons, satins shimmering like mirages. What started as enhancements turned compulsive, patterns that induced optical illusions, dresses with motifs that seemed to move when stared at, evoking vertigo and test fittings. One design, a cape for Marcus lined with swirling fractals, made her dizzy as she pinned it, whispers urging, "Make it real, make the audience see what isn't." She'd blink away hallucinations of threads weaving themselves, only to find hours lost, fingers pricked bloody from needles. At breakfast, simple fare like oatmeal and fresh oranges from the market, she'd space out, staring at Lily's school drawings as if they hid secret messages. Marcus noticed, gently teasing, but inside, he recognized the shared affliction, the entity spreading like a contagion through their bond. The MGM Grand itself became a canvas for this escalating turmoil, the casino's operations subtly disrupted in ways that baffled management. Neon signs outside flickered erratically, not from faulty wiring. Electricians checked the circuits, finding volts steady at 120, but as if pulsed by an unseen rhythm, drawing complaints from passersby on the sidewalk. Inside, during Marcus's shows, which he stubbornly continued despite the risks, delusion wove its deceptions among the patrons. One performance saw slot machines in the adjacent gaming floor chime jackpot tunes without payouts, players mesmerized by illusory wins flashing on screens. Another night, audience members reported post-show visions, walking the strip, seeing doubled hotel towers, or hearing echoes of Marcus's voice in the wind tunnels between buildings. Reviews turned mixed. Some raved about the immersive experience. Others filed refunds, claiming induced nausea akin to motion sickness from a roller coaster at the nearby New York. Still years from opening, but foreshadowed in city plans. Marcus's vanishings grew perilously authentic. In one act, he entered the box amid pyrotechnic sparks, small bursts, yielding about 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit for split seconds, and failed to reappear on cue. The crowd waited, murmurs rising as minutes ticked by on the massive digital clock backstage. Isabella improvised, extending her solo routine with flourishes and audience participation, pulling volunteers for card guesses while sweat beaded under her makeup. He materialized hours later, not in the theater, but wandering the employee parking garage 3 levels below, disheveled and mumbling about lost realms. Security footage, reviewed the next day on grainy VHS tapes, showed no trace of his path, as if he'd phased through walls. Management called a meeting in a conference room overlooking the pool, plush with leather chairs and a mahogany table, warning of contract termination if safety issues persisted. "We can't have ghosts in the machine," the suit said, unaware of the literal truth. At home, the strain boiled over into heated exchanges that tested the family's unity. One stormy evening, rare desert rain pelting the windows like accusatory fingers, Marcus and Isabella argued in the kitchen, Lily eavesdropping from her doorway. "You're letting this consume you," Isabella accused, her voice cracking as she slammed a cabinet, dishes rattling. "The shows, the box, it's stealing you from us!" Marcus, eyes wild under the pendant light, retorted with voices slipping through, "We give perfection, you resist the gift." The words weren't his, twisting the dispute into surreal territory. Lily interrupted, tears streaming, clutching a drawing of fractured family portraits. "Stop fighting the others inside, Daddy!" The moment sobered them, leading to a tearful embrace on the living room couch. But the rift lingered, sleep fractured by Marcus's nocturnal ramblings, multiple tongues debating in the dark. echoing off the high ceilings. Delusion reveled in these divisions, its presence confirmed in Marcus's visions, a shimmering figure recounting its downfall, once bearer of prophetic dreams to saints, but seduced into falsity, banished for turning holy insights into maddening mirages. It boasted of alliances with Legion, creating chaotic theaters through susceptible hosts, mirroring Satan's role as the father of lies in John's Gospel. Marcus shared these in hushed tones with Isabella during walks in nearby parks, green oases like Lorenzi, about 4 miles north, with duck ponds and picnic areas offering brief respite. She'd listen, her faith stirring, suggesting they return to the cathedral more earnestly. The climax of this phase came during a high-stakes show on Valentine's Day, red hearts decorating the lobby, couples filling seats for romantic outings. Marcus attempted a mass illusion, waving a wand ebony with silver inlay and declaring the audience vanished in a puff of smoke from canisters releasing harmless nitrogen. But delusion amplified it. Spectators hallucinated their seats emptying, companions disappearing, leading to screams and a near stampede as folks groped for exits in perceived darkness. Ushers restored order with flashlights, but the chaos made headlines in the Las Vegas Review-Journal. Magic mishap causes panic at MGM. Management suspended shows indefinitely, citing liability, leaving Marcus adrift, income halted like a slot machine jammed mid-spin. In my role as an exorcist, I've seen how allied demons coordinate assaults, one eroding the mind while another fractures bonds. As in cases where possession involves clusters like the 7 spirits in Mary's Magdalene from Luke's Gospel. This partnership aimed to isolate Marcus, but it backfired by pushing Isabella toward decisive action. Attending a women's Bible study at Guardian Angel Cathedral, a modest brick building with spires piercing the skyline, interior warmed by candlelight and incense, she confided in a fellow parishioner about the hauntings. Word reached Father Dominic Rossi, the 56-year-old pastor, an Italian-American with a baritone voice honed from seminary choirs and a no-nonsense approach forged in Vegas's underbelly of vice. Father Rossi invited Isabella to his office, a cozy space with bookshelves sagging under tomes on theology and a crucifix dominating one wall. Over herbal tea, chamomile to calm nerves, she detailed the saga, the box, voices, delusions, failed therapy. Rossi listened intently, his experience with local oddities, gamblers claiming demonic luck, show folk battling addictions, alerting him to patterns. He recognized hallmarks of possession, aversion to holy objects. Marcus had flinched at a blessed medal Isabella wore. Knowledge of hidden things, voices revealing family secrets, superhuman elements, the untraceable vanishings. This isn't mere illness, he concluded, referencing the ritual of exorcisms criteria from the Vatican. He examined a photo of the box Isabella brought, noting the sigil's resemblance to demonic seals in grimoires he'd studied. Rossi contacted Bishop Joseph Anthony Pepe of the Diocese of Las Vegas, a process involving detailed reports, facts from the parish machine pages, whirring out at 10 cents each. The bishop, reviewing in his chancery office downtown, approved preliminary investigations, mindful of church guidelines post-1983 code revisions emphasizing discernment. Rossi visited the Kane home, sprinkling holy water sourced from the Jordan River, blessed annually, which sizzled faintly on the box, eliciting growls from within. Marcus, present, convulsed briefly, eyes glazing as voices protested. Convinced, Rossi petitioned for full exorcism authorization, granted after consultations with experts, including a call to Rome for archival checks on similar artifacts. Preparation ensued discreetly. Rossi assembled a team, enlisting Sister Angela Moretti, a 48-year-old nun from a Roman order, specializing in theological illusions, studying how saints like Teresa of Avila distinguished divine visions from diabolic ones. Dr. Hale was looped in as medical advisor, his skepticism tempered by inexplicable failures, agreeing to monitor vitals. The venue, the MGM stage itself, to confront the evil at its epicenter, lights dimmed, neon muted. Isabella and Lily were included for support, their love a weapon as per Ephesians' armor of God. Rossi briefed them in the cathedral sacristy, vesting in alb and stole, emphasizing prayer and fasting, abstaining from meats, focusing on scripture like Psalm 91 for protection. As February waned with temperatures climbing back to the 60s, anticipation built. Marcus, oscillating between lucidity and torment, consented, a spark of his true self-yearning release. The family attended daily Mass, receiving communion as spiritual fortification, Lily's small hands folded in prayer. This pivot from delusion to deliverance marked hope's dawn amid the neon wilderness. In sharing such accounts, I remind listeners that evil thrives in secrecy but flees the light of Christ. Rossi's methodical approach mirrored my own investigate, discern, act with authority. The stage was set, literally, for the battle ahead.